The dust from the stagecoach hadn't even settled when Evangeline Hart stepped onto the wooden planks of Redemption Creek, Texas, carrying nothing but a worn carpetbag and a reputation that had followed her 300 miles from San Antonio. It was the summer of 1878, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier town nestled between rolling prairies and rocky outcroppings, making the air shimmer like liquid glass above the dirt road that served as the main thoroughfare. She had been warned by the ticket master, by the other passengers, and even by the kindly older woman who had shared her bench during the journey. A woman with her past had no business trying to start fresh in a town where everyone would eventually know her story. Evangeline had listened to them all with the same tired smile, the one she had perfected over the past 2 years, the one that said she had heard it all before and had long since stopped caring what people thought. But that would have been a lie. She cared deeply, which was precisely why she had scraped together every penny she could earn working as a seamstress in San Antonio to buy passage to this remote town where maybe, just maybe, she could disappear into anonymity. The Redemption Creek Hotel stood at the end of the main street, a 2-story building with peeling white paint and a sagging porch that had seen better days. Evangeline walked toward it with her head held high, though her heart hammered against her ribs with each step. She could feel eyes on her from every window, every doorway, watching the stranger arrive with the kind of suspicious curiosity that small towns reserved for outsiders. Mrs. Beatrice Walsh, the hotel proprietor, was a stern woman with silver hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of disapproval. She looked Evangeline up and down with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, taking in the quality dress that had been mended too many times, the worn boots, and the way the young woman held herself with a peculiar mixture of pride and shame. "I need a room," Evangeline said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "just for a few nights until I can find more permanent lodging." "We don't take in trouble," Mrs. Walsh replied bluntly, her fingers drumming on the registration book. "This is a respectable establishment." "I am not looking for trouble, ma'am. I am looking for work and a place to live quietly." Something in Evangeline's tone must have softened the older woman because Mrs. Walsh sighed and opened her registration book. $2 a week, paid in advance. No visitors after 8 o'clock. Breakfast is at 7 sharp. Evangeline counted out the coins carefully, knowing each one represented hours of needlework and skipped meals. As she signed her name in the register, she noticed Mrs. Walsh's eyes widen slightly. "Evangeline Hart," the proprietor read aloud. "Any relation to the Harts from San Antonio?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Evangeline met the woman's gaze directly. "My father was Marcus Hart. He owned a mercantile until he died 3 years ago. My mother passed when I was 12. Mrs. Walsh's expression shifted from suspicion to something that might have been pity, and Evangeline hated that look more than any judgment. She knew what came next because it always came next. The questions, the whispered conversations, the gradual understanding of why a 22-year-old woman of good family would be traveling alone to a strange town without a chaperone or a husband. But Mrs. Walsh simply handed her a key. "Room 4, top of the stairs on the right. Sunday supper is included in your rate." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the main street. Evangeline set down her carpetbag and allowed herself the luxury of sitting for a moment, the tension draining from her shoulders now that she was alone. Through the thin walls, she could hear the sounds of the town settling into evening. Somewhere a piano played a jaunty tune. Horses whinnied in the livery stable across the way. Men's voices rose and fell in conversation, punctuated by occasional laughter. She had been in Redemption Creek for less than an hour when the knock came at her door. Evangeline opened it to find a young woman about her own age with warm brown skin and kind eyes, holding a pitcher of water. "Mrs. Walsh sent me up with fresh water," the woman said with a smile. "I am Rosa. I work in the kitchen." "Thank you," Evangeline said, stepping aside to let her enter. Rosa set the pitcher on the washstand and turned to leave, but hesitated at the door. "It is not my place to say," Rosa began. Her English, careful and precise, with the musical accent of someone who had learned Spanish first. But if you are looking for work, the general store needs someone who can keep books. Mr. Patterson's wife used to do it, but she passed last winter, and he is drowning in paperwork. It was a kindness Evangeline had not expected, and she felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you," she managed. "That is very kind of you to tell me." Rosa smiled warmly. "This town is full of people running from something. We all deserve a chance to start over, no?" After Rosa left, Evangeline washed her face and changed into her other dress, the blue one that was slightly less worn than the brown traveling dress. If she was going to inquire about work, she needed to look as respectable as possible. She brushed out her dark hair and pinned it up carefully, studying her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. At 22, she had been told she was pretty enough, with high cheekbones and large hazel eyes that her mother used to say could look right through a person's soul. But prettiness had not saved her from heartbreak or scandal. The general store was still open when she made her way down the street in the fading light of evening. The bell above the door chimed as she entered, and she found herself in a cluttered space filled with everything from saddles to sugar, tools to tinned goods. A portly man with thinning hair and wire-rimmed spectacles looked up from behind the counter where he was attempting to sort through a stack of invoices. "Help you, miss?" he asked, distraction evident in his voice. "Mr. Patterson, my name is Evangeline Hart. I have just arrived in town, and I heard you might be in need of someone who can keep books." The man's eyes lit up with something close to desperation. "Can you actually do figures? Not just say you can, but really manage accounts?" "My father owned a mercantile in San Antonio. I kept his books from the time I was 16 until he died. I can show you samples of my work if you would like." Mr. Patterson looked as though Christmas had come early. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow, if that suits you." They negotiated terms quickly. The pay was modest but fair, and Mr. Patterson seemed so relieved to have help that Evangeline suspected he would have agreed to almost anything. She left the store with her first real hope since arriving in Redemption Creek. Perhaps she truly could build a new life here. Perhaps her past did not have to define her future. But small-town gossip traveled faster than wildfire on the prairie, and by the time she returned to the hotel for supper, Evangeline could feel the weight of curious stares and whispered conversations. In the dining room, families and solitary men sat at long tables, eating the simple fare of beef stew and cornbread that Mrs. Walsh served. Rosa showed Evangeline to a seat at the end of one table, and for a few minutes she ate in relative peace. Then she heard it, the whispered word that had chased her from San Antonio: fallen. One woman said it to another while glancing in Evangeline's direction, and though they tried to be discreet, the word carried in the quiet room like a gunshot. Evangeline's appetite vanished. She knew what would come next because it always came next. The decent women would avoid her. The men would assume she was available for purchase. Shopkeepers would be cold. And eventually even kind-hearted Mr. Patterson would hear the story and rescind his job offer because no respectable business could employ a woman with her reputation. She excused herself and fled to her room, hating the tears that spilled down her cheeks, hating the unfairness of a world that forgave men everything but condemned women for a single mistake. She had been 17 and in love, or what she had thought was love. Charles Worthington had been 25, handsome and eloquent with his promises. He had courted her properly, or so she had believed, speaking of marriage and a future together. She had trusted him with everything, including her virtue, believing they would be wed within the month. Instead, Charles had disappeared the moment she told him she was with child. She had learned later that he was already engaged to a banker's daughter in Dallas, that their entire courtship had been nothing more than a cruel game to him. The baby had come too early and had not survived even a day, a tiny girl who had never drawn a full breath. Evangeline had held her daughter for one precious hour before the midwife had taken her away, and the grief had nearly destroyed her. But it was not grief that had destroyed her reputation. It was the scandal. In San Antonio, everyone had known. The women who had once invited her to tea had crossed the street to avoid her. The young men who had once courted her had stopped calling. Even at her father's mercantile, customers had whispered and stared until her father, already sick with the lung fever that would kill him, had suggested she might be happier somewhere else. A sharp knock on her door interrupted her tears. Evangeline wiped her face quickly. "Yes?" "Miss Hart, there is someone downstairs asking for you," Rosa called through the door. Evangeline's stomach clenched. It was starting already. Some man who had heard the gossip and thought she would welcome his attention. "Tell them I am not receiving visitors." "He says it is about the job at the general store?" Confused and wary, Evangeline descended the stairs to find a man waiting in the hotel lobby. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed a trim. He wore dusty work clothes and scuffed boots, and his hat was in his hands, which he turned nervously as she approached. What struck her most were his eyes, a startling gray blue that seemed to see more than they should. "Miss Hart?" he asked, his voice a low drawl that marked him as Texas-born. "My name is Cole Brennan. I am sorry to disturb you, but Mr. Patterson asked me to bring you this." He held out a leather-bound ledger. "He said you would need it to start work tomorrow, and he wanted you to have a look at it tonight so you know what you are getting into." Evangeline took the ledger, her fingers brushing his briefly. "That was thoughtful. Thank you for bringing it." Cole Brennan did not leave immediately. Instead, he shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clearly wanting to say something more. "I heard some talk," he finally said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "About you, about your past." Evangeline felt her face flush hot with shame and anger. "If you have come to offer your unwanted attentions based on that talk, Mr. Brennan, I suggest you leave immediately." His eyes widened in shock. "No, ma'am. That is not why I am here at all." He took a breath. "I came because I wanted you to know that not everyone in this town judges a person based on gossip. Some of us believe people deserve a second chance." She stared at him, unsure whether to believe him. Men had said kind things to her before while meaning something entirely different. "Why would you care what happens to me? You do not even know me." "That is true," Cole admitted. "But I know what it is like to have people assume the worst about you before you have even had a chance to prove yourself. I came to Redemption Creek 2 years ago with nothing but a horse and a lot of regrets. Mr. Patterson gave me work at his store when no one else would. He is a good man, and if he is willing to give you a chance, then I figure you deserve one." There was something genuine in his voice that made Evangeline want to believe him. "What regrets did you have?" she asked before she could stop herself. Cole's jaw tightened. "I was a soldier in the cavalry, stationed at Fort Concho. I followed orders I should not have followed, did things I am not proud of. When my enlistment was up, I could not stomach re-enlisting, and I could not go home to face my family knowing what I had done. So I drifted until I ended up here." It was the kind of honesty Evangeline had not expected, and it disarmed her completely. "Thank you for bringing the ledger," she said softly. "And thank you for your kindness." Cole settled his hat back on his head and nodded. "Welcome to Redemption Creek, Miss Hart. I hope you find what you're looking for here." She watched him leave, stepping out into the night where the sounds of the town continued unabated. For the first time since arriving, Evangeline felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Perhaps not everyone had already condemned her. Perhaps there were still people in the world willing to look past her mistakes. The next morning, Evangeline arrived at the general store promptly at 8 o'clock. Mr. Patterson was already there, looking frazzled as he tried to manage a customer while simultaneously searching for an invoice. Cole Brennan was there too, stacking bags of flour in the corner with an efficiency that spoke of long practice. "Miss Hart, thank goodness," Mr. Patterson said with obvious relief. "Mrs. Davidson here needs to settle her account, but I cannot find her receipt from last month." Evangeline had spent 2 hours the previous night reviewing the ledger, and she already had a sense of Mr. Patterson's chaotic system. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the papers scattered across the counter. Within minutes, she had located the receipt and calculated Mrs. Davidson's balance. The customer, a middle-aged woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, looked Evangeline up and down with obvious disapproval. "You are the new girl from San Antonio," she said, her tone making it clear she had heard the gossip. "I am Miss Hart," Evangeline replied with as much dignity as she could muster. "Your balance is $3.40. Mrs. Davidson paid and left without another word, but the message was clear. Evangeline was being watched and judged. She turned to find Cole observing the interaction with a frown. "Do not let her get to you," he said quietly. "Mrs. Davidson disapproves of everyone. Last month she tried to get me fired because she thinks former soldiers are all drunks and troublemakers." "Are you?" Evangeline asked before she could stop herself. Cole grinned, and the expression transformed his face from serious to handsome. "A troublemaker sometimes. A drunk, never. I have seen what whiskey does to a man, and I want no part of it." Over the following weeks, Evangeline settled into a routine that was almost peaceful. She arrived at the store each morning and spent her days organizing Mr. Patterson's chaotic records into a sensible system. The work was satisfying in a way she had not expected. There was comfort in numbers, in the way everything balanced if you were patient enough to find the errors. Cole was always there, moving stock, helping customers, and fixing anything that broke. He was quiet by nature, but Evangeline found herself looking forward to their brief conversations during lulls in business. He told her about growing up on a ranch near Austin, about joining the cavalry because he had wanted adventure, and about the slow realization that real-life warfare was nothing like the glorious stories he had been told. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said one afternoon as they worked together to inventory the stockroom. "Following orders, protecting settlers. But then we were sent to deal with a Comanche village that had been accused of raiding. When we got there, it was mostly women and children. The warriors were away hunting. We were ordered to attack anyway." Evangeline set down the box she had been counting. "What did you do?" "I followed orders," Cole said, his voice hollow. "I told myself I had no choice. But that is a lie soldiers tell themselves. There is always a choice, and I made the wrong one. I still see their faces sometimes when I close my eyes." She reached out without thinking and touched his arm. "You were young and in an impossible situation. That does not excuse it, but it does not make you a monster either." Cole looked at her hand on his arm, and something shifted in his expression. "You are very forgiving for someone the world has not been kind to." "I understand making mistakes," Evangeline said softly. "I understand living with regret." They stood there in the dusty stockroom, and for a moment the air between them felt charged with possibility. Then Mr. Patterson called from the front of the store, and the spell was broken. But Evangeline found herself thinking about Cole long after the workday ended, about the pain in his eyes and the gentleness in his voice. Despite Cole's kindness and Mr. Patterson's support, not everyone in Redemption Creek was willing to give Evangeline a chance. The decent women of the town made their disapproval clear through cold shoulders and whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. At church on Sunday, Evangeline sat alone in the back pew while families clustered together, pointedly excluding her from their groups. It was after one particularly difficult Sunday service that Evangeline sat on the steps of the hotel, fighting back tears of frustration. She had done everything right since arriving in Redemption Creek. She worked hard, kept to herself, and caused no trouble. But it was not enough. It would never be enough because her past was a stain that could not be washed away. "They are not worth your tears." She looked up to find Cole standing there, dressed in what must be his Sunday best, a clean shirt and trousers that had been recently pressed. He sat down beside her on the steps without asking permission. "Everyone in that church has made mistakes," he continued, "but they feel better about their own sins when they can point at someone else and feel superior." "You sound like you have experience with that," Evangeline said, wiping her eyes. "My first Sunday here, the preacher gave a sermon about the sanctity of life and how killing was always wrong. Meanwhile, half the men in that congregation had fought in the war and done things that would make your hair stand on end. But because the war was over and they were on the winning side, their killing was righteous and mine was sin." He shook his head. "It taught me that morality is often just a matter of who is telling the story. That is a cynical view? Maybe. But it is also true. He turned to look at her directly. What happened to you, Evangeline, if you do not mind me asking? She did mind. She had spent years trying not to think about it, not to talk about it, but sitting there with Cole, who had shared his own painful truths, she found herself wanting to tell him. So she did. She told him about Charles, about the promises and the betrayal, about her daughter who had lived for only an hour, and about the aftermath that had destroyed her reputation and driven her from the only home she had ever known. Cole listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I'm sorry that man hurt you, and I'm sorry the world punished you for being hurt." "Everyone says I should have known better," Evangeline said bitterly, "that I should have waited until marriage, that I was foolish to trust him." "You were 17 and in love. He was a grown man who took advantage of your trust. If there is a villain in that story, it is not you." The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, made something inside Evangeline's chest crack open. She had carried the weight of blame for so long, had accepted the world's judgment as truth, that hearing someone say it was not her fault felt revolutionary. "You do not even know me," she whispered. "Why are you being so kind?" Cole's smile was sad. "Maybe because I wish someone had been kind to me when I needed it most." They sat together on the steps as the sun climbed higher in the sky, and Evangeline felt something shifting inside her. For the first time in years, she did not feel completely alone. As autumn painted the prairie in shades of gold and amber, Evangeline and Cole's friendship deepened into something more. It happened gradually, in stolen moments between customers and during evening walks along the creek that gave the town its name. Cole taught her to ride properly, taking her out on his horse to explore the surrounding countryside. She helped him improve his reading, patiently working through the newspaper with him each evening. But it was the small gestures that spoke loudest. The way Cole always saved her the freshest apple from new shipments. The way Evangeline mended his shirts without being asked. The way they seemed to gravitate toward each other in any room like magnets drawn together by invisible force. It was Mr. Patterson who finally acknowledged what everyone could see. "You two should stop dancing around it and just admit you are courting," he said one October afternoon with a knowing smile. Evangeline felt her cheeks flush. "Mr. Patterson, that would not be appropriate. My reputation—" "Your reputation is that of a hard worker who keeps my books better than my late wife ever did, God rest her soul, Mr." Patterson interrupted. "And Cole's reputation is that of a reliable man who has never given me a moment's trouble. What either of you did before coming to Redemption Creek is none of my business or anyone else's." But it was everyone's business in a small town. And Evangeline knew that pursuing a relationship with Cole would only invite more gossip and judgment. She told him as much that evening as they walked along the creek bank, the water running low after a dry summer. "People already talk about me," Cole said with a shrug. "Let them talk about us together instead." "You do not understand," Evangeline insisted. "I will ruin any chance you have at being accepted here. People will say I have trapped you, that I am using you to regain respectability." Cole stopped walking and turned to face her. "Evangeline, do you have feelings for me, real feelings, not just gratitude or friendship?" Her heart hammered in her chest. "Yes," she whispered, "but that does not change the reality of what people will say." "Then let me make this simple." Cole took her hands in his. "I am falling in love with you, not because I feel sorry for you, not because I think you need saving, but because you are smart and kind and stronger than anyone I have ever met. You have survived things that would have broken most people, and you did it with your dignity intact. So if people want to gossip, let them. I have spent too much of my life worrying about what others think." Evangeline felt tears streaming down her face. "I was told I would never find love with my past, that no decent man would want me." Cole's expression was fierce. then I will be the first to try. And I'm going to spend every day proving those people wrong." He kissed her then gently at first and then with growing passion, and Evangeline felt years of shame and pain begin to dissolve. For the first time since Charles had shattered her trust, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of love after all. The next weeks were some of the happiest of Evangeline's life. She and Cole made no secret of their courtship, walking together openly through town, sitting side by side at church, and sharing meals at the hotel dining room. The gossip intensified, of course, but Cole was true to his word. He ignored the whispers and the knowing looks, treating Evangeline with a respect and affection that gradually began to change some minds. Rosa was thrilled, declaring that she had known from the moment she first saw them together that they were meant to be. Mr. Patterson gave his blessing and started making comments about how he would need to hire additional help when Cole inevitably started his own ranch, as any ambitious young man eventually did. But not everyone was pleased. Mrs. Davidson led a contingent of women to speak with Mr. Patterson, demanding that he dismiss Evangeline before she further corrupted the morals of the town. To his credit, Mr. Patterson refused, pointing out that Evangeline's personal life was her own business and had no bearing on her excellent work. The real test came in November when Cole's family visited Redemption Creek. Evangeline had known they were coming but had not expected to meet them, assuming Cole would want to keep his courting separate from his family obligations. Instead, he insisted she join them for dinner at the hotel. Thomas and Martha Brennan were weathered ranch folk in their 50s, with the kind of sun-creased faces that came from a lifetime working the land. Cole's younger sister Sarah was 19 and pretty, with her brother's gray-blue eyes and a forthright manner that reminded Evangeline of Cole himself. The dinner was awkward at first. Martha Brennan was polite but reserved, clearly trying to assess this woman her son was courting. Thomas asked direct questions about Evangeline's background, and she answered as honestly as she could without revealing the painful details. It was Sarah who finally broke the tension. "Cole wrote to us about you," she said, her directness catching everyone off guard. "He said you were special, that you understood him in a way no one else did." Martha shot her daughter a look that said she had spoken out of turn, but Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying Evangeline with new interest. "Is that so? And what exactly do you understand about my son, Miss Hart?" Evangeline met his gaze steadily. "I understand what it is like to carry regrets, to wish you could undo the past but knowing you cannot, to hope that maybe the future can be different if you are willing to work for it." Something in Thomas's expression softened. "Cole told us about his time in the cavalry, about why he left. It was not an easy conversation." "No," Evangeline agreed. "The truth rarely is." After dinner, Martha asked to speak with Evangeline privately. They walked out onto the hotel porch, where the November wind was sharp with the promise of winter. For a long moment, Martha said nothing, simply studying the darkening sky. "I know what happened to you in San Antonio," Martha finally said. "Or at least, I know the version that has spread through the gossip networks. A young woman, unmarried, with a child that did not survive." Evangeline's throat tightened. "Yes, ma'am." "My sister had a similar experience when she was young," Martha continued. "She was 16, and the man was a neighbor's son who promised marriage. When she became pregnant, he denied any involvement. The baby was stillborn, and my sister nearly died from the grief and the shame. She never married, never had another chance at happiness because the world decided she was ruined." Evangeline blinked back tears. "I am sorry for your sister." "I am telling you this," Martha said, turning to face her, "because I do not want that life for you. Cole is a good man with his own scars. If you two can help each other heal, then I will not stand in your way. But I need to know that you truly care for him, that this is not just about finding security or respectability." "I love him," Evangeline said simply. "I did not expect to. I did not think I could love anyone again after everything that happened. But Cole sees me, really sees me, not just my past or my mistakes. And yes, part of me is terrified because I have been hurt before, and I do not know if I am strong enough to survive being hurt again. But when I am with him, I feel like maybe I am worth more than the world says I am. Martha's stern expression cracked into something approaching a smile. That is all I needed to hear. Welcome to the family, Evangeline. Christmas came to Redemption Creek with rare snowfall that transformed the dusty frontier town into something almost magical. Cole gave Evangeline a cameo brooch that had belonged to his grandmother, and she gave him a hand-stitched leather journal for recording ranch accounts, already anticipating the future they were planning together. On New Year's Eve, as 1879 approached, Cole proposed properly in the parlor of the hotel with Rosa and Mr. Patterson as witnesses. He had no ring yet, he explained, but he had a plan. He had saved enough money to lease grazing land east of town, and with his family's help, he could start a small cattle operation. It would be hard work and lean years at first, but he was not afraid of hard work, and if she was willing, he wanted to build that future with her. Evangeline said yes without hesitation, and they were married in February on a cold, clear day that felt like a new beginning. The ceremony was small, held in the church with only a handful of people in attendance. Mr. Patterson walked Evangeline down the aisle, and Rosa stood as her witness. Cole's family made the journey from Austin, and their presence lent the occasion a legitimacy that Evangeline had not expected. The preacher who had given such stern sermons about morality looked uncomfortable performing the ceremony, but he did his duty. As Evangeline and Cole exchanged vows, she saw some of the town's women watching from the back pews, their expressions ranging from disapproval to cautious curiosity. But she also saw Rosa's beaming smile, Martha Brennan's tears of joy, and most importantly, the love shining in Cole's eyes as he promised to honor and cherish her for the rest of his life. Their first home was a modest cabin on the leased land, built with help from Cole's father and brother-in-law. It had 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and windows that looked out over rolling prairie that seemed to stretch forever. Evangeline had never been so happy to have so little. She set up housekeeping with a determination born of finally having something that was truly hers, something that could not be taken away by gossip or judgment. Cole worked from dawn until dusk building his herd, and Evangeline continued working at the general store 3 days a week, her earnings helping to supplement their income during those lean early months. It was exhausting, and there were times when Evangeline wondered if they had taken on too much too soon. But then Cole would come home dusty and tired, and his face would light up when he saw her, and she knew they were building something that mattered. The first real test of their marriage came in May when a drought threatened to destroy the spring grass their cattle needed. Cole grew increasingly worried, spending long hours riding the property and checking water levels in the creek. Evangeline could see the stress eating at him, the way he lay awake at night calculating costs and losses. "We will manage," she told him one night as they lay together in the darkness. "We have faced worse than a dry spring." "If we lose the herd, we lose everything," Cole said. "I cannot provide for you properly. I cannot give you the life you deserve." Evangeline propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "The life I deserve is the one I have right now, with you. Everything else is just details we will work out together." Her faith in him seemed to ease something in Cole's expression. He pulled her close, holding her tightly. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes." "Good," Evangeline said with a smile. "That means you will work hard to keep me." The rains came in late May, breaking the drought and saving their small herd. It felt like a sign that they were meant to succeed, that the universe was finally on their side. As summer arrived with its brutal heat, Evangeline discovered she was pregnant. The news brought a complicated mix of emotions: joy at the possibility of a child with Cole, terror at the memories of her last pregnancy, grief for the daughter she had lost. Cole was overjoyed but cautious, watching Evangeline with the kind of protective concern that was both touching and slightly suffocating. "I will not break," she told him repeatedly. "Women have babies all the time." "But you are not just any woman," Cole insisted. "You are my wife, and I cannot lose you." As autumn arrived again, marking nearly 2 years since Evangeline had first come to Redemption Creek, her pregnancy became obvious. She stopped working at the general store, much to Mr. Patterson's disappointment, and focused on preparing for the baby's arrival. Martha Brennan came to stay for the last month, bringing with her a wealth of practical knowledge and a comforting presence that Evangeline had not realized she needed. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through an entire night and into the following day. Evangeline endured it with gritted teeth, haunted by memories of the last time she had done this, terrified that history would repeat itself. Cole paced outside the cabin, forbidden from entering by his mother, who believed childbirth was women's work. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with a strong set of lungs, Evangeline wept with relief and joy. Martha cleaned the infant and placed him in Evangeline's arms, and for the first time since losing her daughter, Evangeline felt complete. Cole was allowed in then, and the expression on his face when he saw his son made Evangeline fall in love with him all over again. He touched the baby's tiny hand with a reverence that spoke of wonder and terror and overwhelming love. "What should we name him?" Cole asked, his voice rough with emotion. Evangeline looked down at their son, at his perfect features, and the way he grasped her finger with surprising strength. "Thomas," she said, "after your father. Thomas Marcus, for both our fathers." Cole's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect." Those early months with baby Thomas were exhausting and beautiful in equal measure. Evangeline had forgotten how demanding an infant could be, or perhaps she had never truly known, having had so little time with her daughter. Cole was a devoted father, taking on nighttime feedings with goat milk when Evangeline was too exhausted to function, walking the floor with a crying baby when nothing else would soothe him. As Thomas grew from infant to baby, as 1880 gave way to 1881, their ranch slowly prospered. Cole's hard work and careful management paid off, and they were able to purchase the land they had been leasing. They expanded the cabin, adding 2 more rooms and a proper kitchen. Evangeline started a garden that provided vegetables to supplement their diet and extra to sell in town. More importantly, their acceptance in Redemption Creek gradually increased. It happened slowly, almost imperceptibly, as people saw that Cole and Evangeline's marriage was not a scandal but a genuine partnership. When they attended church with baby Thomas, fewer people stared. When Evangeline went into town for supplies, more women stopped to admire the baby and make pleasant conversation. Mrs. Davidson remained coldly disapproving, but even she could not maintain complete hostility in the face of an adorable baby who smiled at everyone. One Sunday after services, she actually complimented Evangeline on Thomas's behavior during the sermon, and though it was a small thing, it felt like a victory. In the spring of 1882, Evangeline discovered she was pregnant again. This time there was less fear and more excitement. Thomas was a thriving toddler, and the ranch was stable enough that they could afford another mouth to feed. Cole was overjoyed, already making plans to expand the cabin again to accommodate their growing family. Their daughter was born in December, arriving quickly and efficiently as though she was in a hurry to join the world. She had Evangeline's dark hair and Cole's gray-blue eyes, and they named her Grace, because grace was what had brought Evangeline to Redemption Creek and into Cole's life. As 1883 began, Evangeline found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 5 years ago, she had been broken and desperate, fleeing from a past that seemed determined to destroy her future. She had been told repeatedly that she would never find love, that her mistakes had disqualified her from happiness. But Cole had looked at her history and said, "Then I will be the first to try." And he had tried, not just with words, but with actions. He had stood beside her when the town gossiped. He had defended her when people judged. He had loved her not despite her past, but as a complete person whose past was part of what made her strong. Now, watching Cole play with Thomas in the yard while she nursed baby Grace by the window, Evangeline felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. Their life was not perfect. The ranch was still small, money was often tight, and there were people in town who would probably never fully accept her. But she had a husband who loved her, healthy children, and a home that was truly hers. Rosa visited frequently, having become Evangeline's closest friend and Grace's godmother. Mr. Patterson had finally hired a permanent bookkeeper, but still consulted with Evangeline on complicated accounts, valuing her expertise. Cole's family treated her as one of their own, with Martha frequently making the journey from Austin to visit her grandchildren. One evening in late spring, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of orange and gold, Cole turned to Evangeline with a serious expression. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Marrying me, I mean. Taking on this hard life instead of trying to find something easier?" Evangeline looked at him in surprise. "Where is this coming from?" "I was in town today and heard Mrs. Davidson telling someone that you could have done better than a former soldier with a small ranch. That you settled for me because you had no other options." Evangeline felt a flash of anger at the woman's persistent meanness, but it faded quickly. Mrs. Davidson's opinion no longer had the power to hurt her. "Do you know what I was told when I left San Antonio?" she asked Cole. "That I would never find love with my past. That I should be grateful for whatever man was willing to overlook my mistakes. That I would probably end up alone or worse." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "But you did not overlook my past, Cole. You acknowledged it and loved me anyway. You did not marry me out of pity or because you thought I had no other options. You married me because we chose each other. So no, I do not regret a single moment. This life with you is everything I never knew I needed." Cole pulled her close, and they sat together as darkness fell over the prairie, their children asleep inside and their future stretching out before them like the endless Texas sky. The years continued to flow like the creek that wound through their property. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy who loved horses and following his father around the ranch. Grace became a lively toddler with a stubborn streak and a laugh that could light up any room. In 1885, they welcomed another son, William, named for Cole's grandfather. The ranch prospered gradually but steadily. Cole hired 2 ranch hands to help with the growing herd, and they built a proper barn and bunkhouse. Evangeline's garden expanded into a small orchard, and she started selling preserves and baked goods in town, her reputation as a skilled cook slowly overtaking the old gossip about her past. By the time 1887 arrived, bringing with it Thomas's 7th birthday and Evangeline's 30th, the Hart family was firmly established in Redemption Creek. The town had grown too, with new families arriving and old prejudices gradually fading. Cole was elected to the town council, a position of respect that would have seemed impossible when he first arrived as a drifter with a dark past. One afternoon in June, Evangeline was working in her garden when a stagecoach pulled up to their property. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun, surprised by the unexpected visitor. A well-dressed couple emerged, the man tall and silver-haired, the woman elegant in a traveling suit. As they approached, Evangeline felt a jolt of recognition. The man was her father's brother, Uncle Robert, whom she had not seen since her father's funeral. The woman must be his wife, Adelaide. "Evangeline?" Robert called out uncertainly. "Is that really you?" She set down her gardening tools and walked toward them, her mind racing. "Uncle Robert, Aunt Adelaide, this is unexpected." Robert looked uncomfortable. "We have been trying to find you for months. When you left San Antonio, you did not tell anyone where you were going. It was only by chance that a business associate mentioned seeing the name Hart in Redemption Creek." "I left because I was not wanted," Evangeline said bluntly. "The scandal was too much for San Antonio society to bear." "I know," Robert said heavily. "And I'm ashamed to say I did nothing to help you when you needed family most. Your aunt and I talked about taking you in, but we were worried about our own daughters' reputations. We told ourselves you would be fine, that you were resourceful, but we were wrong to abandon you." Evangeline did not know what to say. She had spent so long being angry at her family for failing her that she had not prepared for an apology. Adelaide spoke up, her voice gentle. "We came because we wanted to make amends, if possible. We have no claim on you after how we failed you, but we hoped you might at least allow us to know you again. You are our only niece, Evangeline, the last connection to Robert's brother. Before Evangeline could respond, Cole appeared from the barn, alerted by the sound of visitors. Thomas and Grace were right behind him, curious about the strangers. Cole assessed the situation quickly, coming to stand protectively beside Evangeline. "These are my aunt and uncle from San Antonio," Evangeline explained. "This is my husband, Cole Brennan, and our children, Thomas, Grace, and William." Robert's eyes widened as he took in the children, the well-maintained ranch, and Cole's protective stance. "You have built a life here," he said, with what sounded like surprise. "I have built a family here," Evangeline corrected, after San Antonio made it clear I had no place there. The visit was awkward, but Cole invited them in for coffee with a hospitality that Evangeline appreciated. As they sat in the cabin's main room, Robert and Adelaide shared news from San Antonio. Several families from the old neighborhood had fallen on hard times. The mercantile that had once belonged to Evangeline's father had changed hands 3 times and finally closed. And Charles Worthington, the man who had ruined Evangeline's reputation, had himself been involved in a financial scandal and fled to Mexico to avoid prosecution. "There is justice in that, I suppose," Evangeline said, though she felt none of the satisfaction she might have expected. Charles Worthington was part of a past that no longer defined her. Before they left, Robert took Evangeline aside. "I know we have no right to ask anything of you," he said, "but I want you to know that if you ever need anything, family is family. I failed you once. I do not want to fail you again." Evangeline studied her uncle's face, seeing genuine regret there. "I appreciate that," she said carefully, "but I have everything I need right here. Cole and the children are my family now. However, if you want to be part of our lives, if you want to know your niece and her children, we can build something from here." It was more than Robert had any right to expect, and his eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "I would like that very much." After they left, Cole found Evangeline standing on the porch, watching the dust from their departing coach settle. "Are you all right?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I think so," she said slowly. "I spent so long being angry at everyone who failed me, but holding on to that anger does not change the past. It only poisons the present." "You are allowed to be angry," Cole pointed out. "They did fail you." "Yes, they did. But I survived anyway, and if I am being honest, if things had been different, if San Antonio had welcomed me back and my family had supported me, I never would have come to Redemption Creek. I never would have met you." She turned in his arms to face him. "So maybe everything happened exactly as it was supposed to." Cole kissed her forehead. "I am biased, but I think coming to Redemption Creek was the best decision you ever made." "The second best," Evangeline corrected with a smile. "The best decision was saying yes when you proposed." As the 1880s drew to a close, the Brennan Ranch became one of the most successful small operations in the region. Cole's reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread, and they were able to expand their herd significantly. They built a larger house to replace the original cabin, a proper 2-story home with 4 bedrooms and a parlor that Evangeline furnished with careful pride. Thomas was growing into a responsible young man who already showed his father's skill with horses. Grace, now 7, was fierce and independent, equally comfortable helping with the cattle or learning to bake with her mother. William, at age 5, was the family charmer, able to talk his way out of trouble with an infectious grin. In 1890, Evangeline discovered she was pregnant again at age 33. It was unexpected but welcome, and though the pregnancy was harder than her previous ones, she delivered a healthy daughter in the spring of 1891. They named her Hope because hope was what had sustained them through all the difficult years. As Hope grew from baby to toddler, as the 19th century prepared to give way to the 20th, Evangeline sometimes reflected on the woman she had been when she first arrived in Redemption Creek. That frightened, ashamed young woman who had believed the world's judgment that she was ruined and unworthy of love. She thought about all the people who had told her she would never find happiness, never find a man who could see past her mistakes. And she thought about Cole, who had looked at her history and said those words that had changed everything. "Then I will be the first to try." He had been the first, and he had succeeded beyond anything Evangeline could have imagined. Their love had not just survived, but thrived, growing deeper and stronger with each passing year. They had built a life together from nothing but determination and hope, and a willingness to believe that the past did not have to dictate the future. On their 10th wedding anniversary in February of 1889, Cole had given her a locket containing tiny photographs of each of their children. On the other side, he had engraved simply, "You were always worthy." Evangeline wore it every day, a reminder of how far she had come and how much she was loved. Now, in the summer of 1895, as Thomas approached his 15th birthday and prepared to take on more responsibility on the ranch, as Grace talked excitedly about the new school teacher and her dreams of maybe teaching herself someday, as William and Hope played in the yard with the enthusiastic chaos of youth, Evangeline stood in her kitchen preparing dinner and felt profound gratitude for the life she had built. Cole came in from the barn, dusty and tired, but smiling when he saw her. After 16 years together, he still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She still felt her heart skip a beat when he walked into a room. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand behind her and resting his chin on her shoulder. "About how I was told I would never find love," Evangeline said softly. "About how everyone said my past made me unworthy of happiness." Cole tightened his arms around her. "And I'm thinking about how glad I am that you did not listen to them, that you looked at me and saw someone worth fighting for." "That is because you were always worth fighting for," Cole said. "You just needed someone to prove it to you." Through the window, they could see their children playing as the sun began to set over the Texas prairie. Thomas was teaching William how to throw a rope. Grace was helping Hope gather wildflowers. It was an ordinary moment, the kind that made up the fabric of a life. But to Evangeline, it was extraordinary because it was hers, because she had fought for it and earned it and built it with the man she loved. The town of Redemption Creek had changed too over the years. It had grown from a dusty frontier outpost into a thriving community with a proper school, a new church, and even a small library. Mrs. Davidson had passed away 2 years earlier, and with her went one of the last voices of judgment against Evangeline. Most people in town now knew her simply as Mrs. Brennan, the capable ranch wife with a head for numbers and a generous spirit. Rosa had married a ranch foreman named Miguel, and they had 3 children who were playmates with the Brennan children. Mr. Patterson had retired and sold the general store to a young couple from St. Louis, though he still stopped by weekly to dispense advice whether it was wanted or not. The hotel was still run by Mrs. Walsh, now well into her 70s but as sharp-tongued as ever. As the century drew to a close and the wild frontier gradually gave way to settled civilization, the stories of outlaws and Indian wars were replaced by talk of progress and the new century approaching. But for Evangeline and Cole, the greatest adventure had always been building a life together. In the winter of 1899, as the nation prepared to celebrate a new century, Evangeline fell ill with pneumonia. The winter had been harsh, and despite her usual robust health, she could not seem to shake the cough that had started in December. By January, she was bedridden, and Cole was beside himself with worry. Thomas, now 19 and fully capable of running the ranch, took over his father's duties so Cole could stay with Evangeline. Grace, at 17, managed the household with capable efficiency while caring for her younger siblings. The whole family rallied around Evangeline as she fought the illness that tried to claim her. During the long nights when her fever was high and her breathing labored, Cole sat beside her bed and talked to her about their life together. He reminded her of the day they met, of their walks by the creek, of the moment he knew he loved her. He talked about their children and their grandchildren to come. He refused to accept that their story might end here. "You survived so much to get here," he told her hoarsely. "You survived heartbreak and scandal and people who tried to break your spirit. You do not get to leave me now, Evangeline Brennan. We have too much life left to live." Whether it was his stubborn faith or her own determination or simply luck, Evangeline began to improve. By February, she was out of bed. By March, she was back to running the household, though Cole insisted she take it easy. The brush with mortality had reminded them both how precious their time together was. When the new century arrived with celebrations and fireworks in towns across America, the Brennan family celebrated quietly at their ranch. They stood together watching the night sky, all 6 of them, and reflected on everything they had built. 22 years ago, I arrived in Redemption Creek with nothing but a carpetbag and a broken heart, Evangeline said to her assembled family. I'd been told I would never find love, never have a real family, never deserve happiness. And now look at us. Thomas, now a man rather than a boy, squeezed his mother's shoulder. You taught us that the past does not define us, he said, that we get to write our own futures. Grace added, and you taught us that love is not about being perfect. It is about finding someone who loves you despite your imperfections. Cole pulled Evangeline close as fireworks lit up the distant sky over town. You gave me a reason to believe in second chances, he told her. You gave me a family and a purpose and a love I never thought I deserved. We gave each other that, Evangeline corrected. When you said you would be the first to try to love me despite my past, you changed everything. You proved that everyone who said I was unworthy was wrong. As the new century began, the Brennan family continued to thrive. Thomas married a rancher's daughter named Sarah and built his own small ranch on land adjacent to his parents' property. Grace defied conventional expectations by attending teaching college in San Antonio, becoming the educated woman she had always dreamed of being. William followed his father into ranching, while Hope, still young, showed promise as an artist, filling the house with her drawings and paintings. Cole and Evangeline grew older together, their hair turning gray, and their faces accumulating the lines that came from a lifetime of laughter and hard work. They added a wing to the house for when their children visited with grandchildren. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and ordinary days that were special simply because they were together. In the autumn of 1905, Uncle Robert passed away and left Evangeline a substantial inheritance, having never had children of his own. It was a final gesture of the amends he had tried to make over the years. Evangeline used part of the money to expand the ranch and donated the rest to build a women's shelter in San Antonio, a place where women like her younger self could find help and support without judgment. On their 25th wedding anniversary in February 1904, the entire town of Redemption Creek threw a celebration party at the church hall. It was a testament to how completely Evangeline and Cole had been accepted into the community, how thoroughly they had proven that people could change and grow and build beautiful lives from broken beginnings. Standing before the assembled crowd, Cole was asked to give a speech. He was not a man comfortable with public speaking, but he stood with Evangeline beside him and spoke from the heart. 27 years ago, I came to this town running from my past, he said. I was ashamed of things I had done, convinced I did not deserve happiness or forgiveness. Then I met Evangeline, and I learned that everyone deserves a second chance if they are willing to work for it. He turned to look at his wife, his eyes bright with emotion. Evangeline, you were told you would never find love with your past. I said I would be the first to try. But the truth is, you saved me as much as I saved you. You taught me that love is not about perfection. It is about choosing someone every day through good times and hard times and building a life together one moment at a time. The crowd applauded, and Evangeline felt tears streaming down her face. Rosa hugged her tightly, and Martha Brennan, now in her 80s but still strong, clasped Evangeline's hand with fierce affection. You proved them all wrong, Martha whispered. Every person who doubted you, who judged you. You proved that love can conquer even the harshest judgment. As 1910 approached, bringing with it the modern era of automobiles and telephones, the Brennan Ranch remained a place where the old values of hard work, family, and loyalty still held sway. Evangeline and Cole were in their early 50s now, still active and involved in running the ranch, though Thomas had taken over most of the daily operations. They had 8 grandchildren by now, with more on the way, and the house was frequently filled with the chaos and joy of family gatherings. Grace had married a fellow teacher and lived in Austin, but visited regularly. William had married Rosa's daughter Elena, further cementing the deep friendship between the two families. Hope, at 19, was studying art in Dallas, her talent having earned her a coveted spot at a prestigious school. One evening in late spring, Cole and Evangeline sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset as they had done countless times over the decades. Their hands were clasped together, fingers intertwined with the casual intimacy of people who had loved each other through every joy and sorrow life could offer. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night I came to your hotel?" Cole asked. "When I brought you the ledger," Evangeline smiled. "I told you to leave because I thought you were there with dishonorable intentions. And I told you that some of us believed in second chances," Cole said. "I meant it then, but I did not fully understand how much we would both need that belief over the years. We built something beautiful from broken pieces," Evangeline mused. "All those people who said I would never find love, who said my past disqualified me from happiness, they were wrong. Not because my past did not matter, but because I found someone who understood that the past is just one chapter, not the whole story." Cole raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I told you I would be the first to try to love you despite your past. But Evangeline, I need you to know something. I do not love you despite your past. I love you, all of you, including the scars and the pain and the strength you gained from surviving. Your past made you who you are, and who you are is the woman I have loved for over 30 years. Those words, spoken in the golden light of a Texas sunset with the sounds of their grandchildren playing in the distance, were perhaps the greatest gift Cole had ever given her, because they acknowledged the truth that Evangeline had slowly learned over the decades, that she did not need to be ashamed of her past or pretend it had not happened. Her past was part of her story, and her story had a happy ending not despite her history, but because she had found someone who loved her completely. As full darkness fell and the stars emerged overhead, Cole and Evangeline remained on the porch, talking and laughing and simply enjoying each other's presence as they had done for over 3 decades. Their love story had started with heartbreak and scandal, with a frightened woman fleeing her past and a man determined to prove that second chances were possible. It had been tested by gossip and hardship, by difficult births and harsh winters, by illness and loss, and all the ordinary struggles that made up a life. But it had endured because they had chosen each other every single day and had built something stronger than judgment or shame. The town of Redemption Creek, which had given them both a place to start over, would continue to grow and change as the years passed. But the story of Cole and Evangeline Brennan would be remembered as a testament to the power of love to transform lives, to heal wounds, and to prove that no one is ever truly beyond redemption if someone is willing to see their worth. Evangeline had been told she would never find love with her past. Cole had said, "Then I will be the first to try." And in trying, he had not just succeeded, he had created a love story for the ages, one that would be told to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren as proof that love, real love, sees not just who we have been, but who we can become. As they finally went inside for the night, hands still clasped, they carried with them the satisfaction of a life well lived and a love well earned. The Wild West was fading into history, but the legacy of 2 people who had refused to let their past destroy their futures would endure for generations to come. They had proven that the greatest adventure was not taming the frontier, but opening your heart to love despite every reason not to, and building a life together one beautiful, imperfect day at a time.